Hi, Jennifer LaHaye here with Why Dyslexia is Not a Dirty Word. So we're living on the edge today. I got my partner in crime over here, Tobias. Tobias is a school psychologist and an academic language therapist, and she's going to tell you why dyslexia is not a dirty word. So I've had some questions for Jean about dyslexia and her job as a school psychologist. One of my first questions is, Jean, can school psychologists diagnose dyslexia if you're if you work in a public school setting?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My initial answer is going to say no, school psychologists do not diagnose dyslexia, because the role and function of a school psychologist is to help the team determine eligibility for special education supports and services.
Can you tell me who's on the team?
That team would include the parent, a general education teacher, someone like myself. It could be other folks, related service providers like speech language pathologists, other people that might interact with a student like a title teacher or an intervention specialist, the principal in that building. That would constitute a team of people.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
So the school psychologist takes a look at data, takes a look at the student, and then as a team, the school determines if they're eligible for services, which is not saying that they're diagnosing a learning disability per se. They're saying they're eligible for services under a specific category.
Okay, so that's a distinct differentiation between diagnosing dyslexia. She's focusing on the educational needs of the student.
Right.
Is that right?
Right.
More than saying, yes, your child has dyslexia.
You have a learning disability, or you have dyslexia, or you have autism, or you have ADHD. The school team is determining if you're eligible for services. They're not saying that you have this condition. They're just saying that you're eligible for services under a certain category.
And you need maybe some extra support.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you have dyslexia and not need or get services?
Yeah, I mean, you can have a condition, let's say I'm diabetic. That doesn't mean I need insulin. Maybe I can manage my diabetes with my diet and exercise. There's a range of what people need. So you can have a diagnosis from a clinician of dyslexia, but that doesn't necessarily mean you need special education services.
So just because, now you tell me if I'm right or wrong, if a parent goes to a doctor and the doctor says yes, they have dyslexia, okay, that doesn't mean you're automatically going to get services.
Right.
So I think that's an important note to mention, because it can be mild, moderate, or severe, the dyslexia. There might be some suspicions of parents, but it's not a rubber stamp.
Right.
In those situations, the school really needs to do their due diligence and see what services they need to provide, if needed, for that student. So can you talk a little bit about qualifying students, Jean?
Sure. When we look at students, we gather a whole bunch of information. Sometimes we do some assessments like cognitive assessments, achievement assessment, where we look at reading, writing, and math. Sometimes we have communication or fine motor skills assessment. We take a look at administering assessments. We also look at how they're performing in the classroom. There could be observations. We could look at work samples. We could look at grades, which is not the end-all be-all by any means. We could look at performance on state assessments, which is not the end-all be-all either. But we look at all different types of information, and we use that information to determine the eligibility of the student.
And the team should also consider, and I don't know if you want to address this or not, Jean, if you think, not only the weaknesses of the child, because I'll tell you what, but the strengths.
We gotta look at the
well.
strengths. You know, it's very hard to go through a meeting and to hear all the things your child cannot do. We always have to focus on what they can do, because that should be used then to help with a plan for how we're gonna, either remediate what's the difficulty, or how we're gonna support them. And we also need to focus on the strengths, because we need to focus on their self-esteem too, because if we're always talking about what they cannot do, then you just start to feel down about yourself.
Yeah, and then those kids kids that are early age, they would figure that out real quick,
Right.
wouldn't they, Jean?
Right, absolutely.
So what can you say, is there any advice that you can give to, let's say, teachers when they're talking about a school psychologist, and if they have concerns about, do you tell teachers, like, what do you say to the teacher? Do you notice this, this, and this? Is there anything that you...
Well, if a teacher comes to me and says, Jean, I have a concern about so-and-so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first thing we should be doing is sitting as a team, and every building is different, every district is different how they tackle this,
Mm-hmm.
but sitting down as a team and looking at your resources that you have available and asking, what is it exactly the student needs? What are they struggling in? What are you already doing? And what can we do next? That is essentially what we end up doing. And if it's specifically in reading, what specifically about the reading is the issue? Is it the comprehension? Is it decoding skills? Is it vocabulary? Really teasing out what are the issues, and then what can we do as a team in order to either provide some small group instruction or to change instruction, or what can we change in order to address the area of need.
So if a teacher says to you, hey Jean, this kid can't read, you're like, well, what do you mean? What is
exactly? That's why I say, what do you mean?
What do you mean? So we want details. We want to know the ins and outs of that student and why they can't read. Some teachers know why. Some teachers might be able to verbalize that information. I think others might struggle.
Right.
It depends on a variety of factors.
I think what's good, lately is we do have a lot of assessments that teachers are giving to their students, and that helps them tease out the specific areas that they're struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
So there is information out there. I think teachers are good at kind of piecing out now that we have certain assessments that they give, kind of teasing out what those areas of need are.
Great. I think there was something else I was going to ask you, Miss Jean, and I just forgot what that was. Oh, I know. How does a parent, if the parent really is concerned about a reading issue, they say, my child can't read, but they don't know. How do they go about going through the process of acquiring an individualized education plan or an IEP? What can the parent, what action can they take? Yeah.
Well, the first thing to do is to call a meeting. That's their first step.
And who do they call a meeting with?
What you're going to do is you're going to contact your teacher and you say, I would like to meet with you, with the interventionist, or with the school psychologist, with a team of people, and talk about my concerns. And essentially some districts call it an intervention assistance team meeting, some districts call it an response to intervention team meeting. Essentially, you just want to get a team of people that know the child to help problem solve what some of the issues are. That would be the first thing. And then you can even say, I'm thinking about, does my child need a little bit more support? I don't know how to access these supports, and I want to have a conversation about, are they eligible for some additional help? And what can we do?
Can I just say that I would encourage parents, if you're not sure, go to that classroom teacher. Don't jump right over to the principal. Go to the classroom teacher. They're the one that has the day in and day out. As a classroom teacher, you get a little offended, speaking from one who knows, that you need to really have contact, because they really do want to help your child. They might not always know how, but they want to. And you need to include them in the process. But you also need to include smart people like Jean here, who can really ask pointed questions of the teacher, of the parent, and try to figure out really what you're looking for. It is a process, and parents and teachers alike should not be afraid to ask questions. Why is this child not progressing? What do I need to do as the parent? What do I need to do as the teacher? How can I make this child move forward in their reading? And Jean is a great resource. Now, Jean, like I said, is a double threat, being a school psychologist and an academic language therapist. But Jean, would you say that a lot of school psychologists can ask some pointed questions? You don't have to be an academic language therapist to give some guidance, do you?
No, you don't have to be an academic language therapist. You don't have to be a reading specialist, because school psychologists do have training in all these areas of academic areas, and then we're trained to ask certain questions. Now, my additional training does help me a lot more in terms of addressing the need and what students need
Maybe like remediation
for
or
remediation.
or specific instruction points or
Right.
something. Yeah.
But the school psychologist is very capable of asking pointed questions and then looking at what types of data, will tap into those areas of need.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to just reiterate 2 things from our conversation with Jean. You might have gotten more things, but I'm multitasking here. I'm driving.
We're driving.
I want to keep everybody safe on the road. First thing is, school psychologists cannot diagnose dyslexia. They're just trying to meet the need of the child in an educational setting. Did I get that? Is that correct, Jean?
Well,
You want to clarify?
I want to clarify.
Please
The
do.
majority of school psychologists cannot diagnose dyslexia. Unless you are a private practice, licensed school psychologist practicing outside of the school setting, and you've had clinical training, then we could probably do some sort of diagnosing. But we are not clinicians. We don't have the same, many of us don't have the same training as what a clinical psychologist does. Like, for example, my school psych program, we did not have the DSM. I practiced for 6 years in Missouri where I only did the IQ. I never heard a child read because the intervention specialist did the reading assessment. So, understanding dyslexia, I had a very basic kind of knowledge of it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I myself went out on my own and started asking these questions and getting this additional training did I have a really much better understanding of what it entailed and then how it impacted kids at school and how that fits in our current model of special education. So diagnosing, not really the job of the school psychologist.
That's what I want everyone to know, okay? Because it's clear. It's a very different situation.
And even though I have a lot more training in that area,
Right.
I'm still very leery of saying with ultimate certainty, yes, this child is dyslexia.
What can you say? Would you use the word dyslexia in a meeting?
I do use the word dyslexia. I say, I'm seeing a lot of traits, or I see this profile of a student with dyslexia, but the eligibility category is still going to be specific learning disability. I can't change the law
But
about
she
that.
can use the word dyslexia in maybe the profile or the description of the child. Is that right, Jean?
Sure, absolutely.
And so when we use the word dyslexia, we know how to address that need. People like us who are trained out there, who are real specific in the needs of that child, can really help. So point number 1, dyslexia is not a dirty word.
Right.
Point number 2, some can diagnose school psychs, but you have to probe further and find out what their background is and their educational.
Right.
Point number 3 is parents, teachers, don't be afraid to ask questions. Your school psychs are there for you. They have the utmost knowledge that you can tap into. They can really, really be a great support. So, hey everybody, Jean, dyslexia is not a dirty word. Thanks again. Thanks for your time, Jean.
No problem.
We're safe. Time out. Woo!